event recording. Now we have to move this one a bit. And you guys as well. Okay. How does this work? Chat box. You can see it. Pops up.
Yeah, pops up.
Okay. Pops up. Is that fine if it pops up or do you? Yeah. Okay. Starting. Yeah. So, dear colleagues, welcome to our webinar. It is very pleasant to have today with us our two amazing speakers, Katerina and Chris. Thank you for coming. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you're not freezing and you're warming up, and you will spend the next hour talking about something very exciting and inspiring. So giving the floor to Katya and Chris. One little thing I wanted to make sure we all know is that when you type your answers in the chat box, please make sure that you use a chat box, not Q&A, but chat box, all right? Katya, Chris, welcome.
Thank you very much, Anna, for inviting us here today, and thank you very much, everyone, for finding the time and energy to listen to us. We're going to be talking about preparing for ZNO, the use of English task.
The problem with the sound, apparently, so they can't hear us.
Okay. Is that better if we speak up a little bit? Can you hear us now? Can you type? Yes. Okay, so you can hear us now. Good. Thank you. So we'll start with introductions, and let me introduce you to my colleague Chris. We both work for International Language Center, where Chris is responsible for exam preparation. He's taking care of the whole department, planning syllabi, choosing courses, creating mock exams, helping students register, and also helping the teachers develop as exam teachers, helping them teach the students to take exams.
Yes, and sitting to my right is the wonderful, fantastic, talented Kate Procenko. She's both our Director of Studies and our Director of Teacher Training. She's the person who basically keeps the world turning at our school. She handles everything from organizing all the teachers, planning all their professional development. Anything that happens in the teaching department goes through her. So
I wouldn't be able to do that without you and your help. So. Thank you. Okay, so let us first speak about
sorry, is that better? Okay.
Okay, great. So, you've already done the introduction, and first, to start with, we're going to do a quick review of the terminology we'll be using in our session today, and then Chris will talk about the exam-taking strategies necessary for your students to succeed. I will then briefly talk about how we can help our students prepare throughout the year, and we've allocated around 10 minutes for questions and answers in case you have any at the end of our session. We're still seeing messages. Can you hear us now? Okay, we see yes, yes, thank you. So let's go on. Okay. Okay, so terminology review. We're going to give definitions of the words you can see on the screen. And if you can guess which of the words we're talking about, please type it in the chat box. All right, Chris, would you like to start?
Yes. So the first word, it's going to be whenever I read or listen to any text in English. This is going to count as, what's the word? You can type it in chat.
Input. Yes, we see some answers. Input. Yes, that's right. That's input. And this is when you read or listen. However, when we speak or write, this can be counted as output. Right, thank you. That's the general standard terminology. And for the purposes of this seminar, we're also going to talk about input as what we're teaching. For instance, if our topic is present perfect, we're inputting present perfect. And if our students are producing it, that's their output. So two different things. All right, shall we move on?
Yeah, let's move on. So related to the process of input, there's another thing that happens whenever my students start seeing examples of the present perfect in text. They look at it and they realize that what they are looking at is in fact a different tense or an example of what they're studying or of what they're about to study. Noticing. I think, yeah, that's it. Noticing.
All right.
Yeah.
That's great. That's noticing. That's right. Okay. Our next thing would be the type of language our students are producing. For instance, things like I am agree or errors in present perfect. When our students have already been introduced to that and they're using it as their intermediate stage. All right. Can we get noticing revision? Well, not exactly. Interlanguage. Somebody typed interlanguage. That is interlanguage, and the prefix inter tells us that this is our intermediate stage. We are between the input, that means we have been introduced to this, and output. We're producing it, but not very accurately. All right? Okay.
This is the stage when our students start trying to use the language, whatever language it is.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on then. So we've got another. Okay. So we've got another one. Sometimes in the English language, two words really like each other. For example, blind drunk or make friends. Yeah, and someone's already typed it in the chat. Yeah, these are all collocations. Yeah, they're two words that occur frequently. The prefix co, meaning together, and location, well, where something is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So we're talking about meaning and frequency here.
Mm-hmm.
However, there are instances of vocabulary working together with some grammar, such as depend on, or there is a table in the classroom. The table is black. The a and the, a table and that table, or depend on are examples of colligation. Excellent.
That was
Thank
quick.
you. Mm-hmm. That was good. So colligation is when two words like each other, but because of the grammar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we do another one?
Yeah. Let's do another one. Mm-hmm. So the next one is. So the next one, it's a framework for my lessons. It's a framework where I start by presenting the target language. We move on to some kind of controlled practice or restricted practice stage, And the lesson ends with, ideally, production of the target language from the student output. Yeah, and I've already seen lots of people typing it, PPP, yeah, presentation, practice, production.
Yeah,
yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so PPP is our standard framework for presentation, practice, production. But we all know that it's important to continue going back to what has already been presented and practicing it again and again and again. So when we're doing things, yes, right, that's right, already people are typing in revision. Mm-hmm. All right.
Okay. So, yeah, so we'll move to something a little bit abstract then. This is what we do when we think about a process that we're doing. I see someone's already typed it. When we think about a process that we're doing and we try to imagine the process either on a piece of paper or by making a drawing or graphic organizer, such as underlining an example in the text, and everyone is screaming at me visualization. Yes, absolutely correct. Whenever we try to represent a mental process on paper.
That's great. We're very glad that so many people are shouting visualization at us, because this is going to be one of the key things in our session.
Yes.
Okay, and one more thing that's left, that taking examples of the language we're teaching and our students are learning and putting it into practice and making sure students can relate to that language. Yes, people are typing personalization, and that's what we wanted to hear. Okay, so I think we can move on.
Yeah.
Great.
So we're going to move on to kind of officially talking about what's involved with the ZNO use of English. Well, in the use of English section on ZNO, there are two tasks. One is a multiple choice close, that is a multiple choice gap fill, which focuses on testing vocabulary. This is generally the first task. And the second is a multiple choice close, which tests grammar.
Okay. This is what we do in the actual exam. But the question we most often hear and we most often ask ourselves is, how do I prepare my students for ZNO use of English? There are two aspects to it. First of all is the knowledge of the strategies, which Chris is going to talk about at length, and this is very, very important.
And the second is knowledge of the language itself, which Kate is going to be showing how to enrich and increase, both using our tasks and on our own. So
we're starting with the strategies.
Yeah, strategies are coming first. So when we talk about strategies, one of the key things for approaching these use of English tasks is that there's a lot that we can do to increase our chances of getting the answer right. And these are going to be what we call our strategies. So we're going to start by working through an exam task together, and then we're going to examine what we've done after. So we're going to start with a gist text. So you're going to see a short text about a person. Actually, you're going to see an exam task that contains a short text about a person. Very quickly, read the text, and you'll see very quickly the text is about a person. In your chat, type first, who is the person, and how does the writer know them? So 2 questions. You can write the answer in the chat, and you can see the text now.
Okay, no sound. That's because we're waiting for your answers. And yes, the answers are coming in.
So we've got friends, Maria, lots of people saying met in Kiev. Yeah, absolutely, we got it. So now that we've got a general idea of what our text is about, we're going to move on to the task itself. Here, you can see the first 2 lines of the text containing the first gap. So what we're going to do first is we're going to look at the text, and we're not going to consider the answers yet. So we're going to look at the gap, and we're going to think about 2 questions. 1, what part of speech do I likely need in this gap? Is it an adjective, a noun? Yeah, I can see people saying verb already. And the second, what word or phrase does my gap connect to? So I'm going to use 2 words in the text to help me. First, I'm going to look at this de on the end of weed, and I think this is probably a would because I don't know any phrases we've had here. So yes, I agree with everyone who's tried the verb so far. We need a verb, absolutely. The second is that I think because this is the vocabulary task, not the grammar task, that my word probably connects to friends and not we would. So, keeping this in mind, I'm going to think about any phrases which I know with the word friends. And if you know any, you can type them in. What comes to mind? I think be friends. So make friends has appeared. Become, be, make, real friends. Okay. So we've got our ideas. Now we're going to look at the possible answers. And here we can see we've gotten lucky because we see a few of our ideas here. We've got make friends, I heard. We've got do friends as well, which may be stay friends, get friends. So I've got my ideas, but I want to check. I don't want to answer the question yet, because now I'm going to start eliminating the wrong answers. So I'm going to think about first, do I know any, well, we've already looked at, do I know any phrases with these words? So now, from my answers, I'm going to see if there's any that I don't know. For example, I don't know any phrases with do friends.
I wouldn't say so.
No. And get friends, and we usually have something else.
Yeah, we usually get friends to do something.
Yeah.
Not that option.
So, because I feel pretty confident that these can be wrong, I'm going to cross them out. And now, we're already down to 2 options. So, next, I'm going to think about what meanings I know for these words and when I usually use them. Well, I know that make friends is something that happens with new people. Yeah, people I don't know. And with stay friends, I know this is about people that I've known for a long time. Maybe we met a long time ago. So using this knowledge, I'm going to look back at the text. And in the text, we have all these sentences like, I met her when, at first glance. So to me, this seems like I'm talking about when we met, not something continuing into the future. So for this reason, I think I'm going to go with make, which just happens to be the right answer for this task. So what's the actual, so what we've just done, if you'd like to explain.
Is the term we had before, that's visualization. If we look back at Chris's slide, you'll see that he's highlighted the grammar and the vocabulary which help him identify the correct option. And this is what we want our students to do in order to A, remember and be able to recall how they got to this answer, so that if they want to check themselves, they don't have to do the whole task all over again. They can just look at their notes. Secondly, when we're visualizing the processes that are happening in our brain, we're making sure we're checking ourselves, and that helps us identify the correct answer. So let's make sure that our students are transferring onto the paper whatever is happening in their brains.
So a way that we can represent this strategy, and what we just did, is the process that basically goes a bit like this. The first thing we did is we read the text quickly, just for the main idea. Again, this is a very, very quick, general idea. We don't want to read every word. This is just for me to have enough context to work through the task and be confident in my choices. Before we considered the answers, we looked at a few things. We looked at the part of speech. We looked at what word or phrase the gap is connected to. And we even brainstormed, we thought of any phrases that we knew with these words, and especially any phrases we know which could possibly fit. Now, even after we have this, we didn't go straight into answering the question. We went to eliminating the wrong answers. So doing things such as saying, are there any phrases which are impossible, like do friends, or checking the meanings that I know for the remaining words. So maybe the phrase does work, but it means something completely different. And checking everything back with the text. And also thinking, this wasn't so relevant for our last example, but we can also think about when we generally use each word, with what topics, talking to whom. A good example of this are the words show versus display. Whereas show, I can use more generally. Display is typically something done by a shop or by a salesman. Finally, we reread our text to make sure that everything is logical. We want to make sure that our text makes sense with our vocabulary, and if it doesn't, we probably need to check something. So now that we have our strategy, I'm handing this over to you. You can see the full task again. I'd like everyone to try to do number 3. And when you've got it, it'll be the third gap, line number 4. And when you've got it, just type your answer in the chat. Sorry, number 3, not number 2.
Although number 2 was correct.
Although number 2 was correct, yes. So, good job. Yeah, so I see lots of people saying shows. Yeah, so that's generally the strategy for the Lexis-based task. So, in order to use these strategies, and in order for our students to use these strategies, there are some things that they need to know about a word or a phrase. The first one of these, in the first strategy we have, the colligation. Yeah. What grammar does this word match? Do we use it with singular, plural? Do we use it with articles? What determiners can I use it with? These can go a long way to helping us predict. Similarly, we also need collocations, like we had with friends. Yeah, because some of those words just didn't collocate with friends, and so they were wrong. We also need to know the part of speech and how the word is formed, the difference between something like use and useful. This can also help us eliminate answers which are grammatically impossible. As was our case with shows and displays, we also need to know the connotation of a word, i.e., who generally says it, who generally uses it, what kind of situation would I expect to hear this word in, and what topics I can use to talk about something. And finally, last but not least, the meanings of the word. So that brings us to a point of saying that because they need all of this to do the task, it's not really enough to have them just translate the words and be done with it. Because the translation may give you the meaning, possibly, and it may give you the part of speech, if you're lucky, but it won't give you things like collocation, or connotation.
we did a little bit of research and we looked at the tasks from the past 3 years, and we analyzed what they're looking for. And it showed us that around 30% of the questions are aimed at meaning. That is to say, if you know the meaning of the word, you can do this task successfully. About 10 to 20% of the tasks are aimed at colligation. That means they're looking for prepositions, countable, uncountable, and so on. And about 50% of the tasks are aimed at collocations. That is to say, how words go together. Okay? Also, about 5 to 10% of the tasks are aimed at connotation and topics. That is Chris's example of show and display. That's also quite difficult to tackle. All right?
Yeah. So this is what is being tested. I think that's the takeaway, is that these big 3 C words are by and large what is being tested. So fortunately, we're moving on now to the grammar task, which is much more straightforward than the Lexi's task. And the strategy that we're going to use for it is very, very similar. So we can go ahead and see our use of English task, and we're going to follow the same procedure at first. Could you read the text quickly? And generally, this person is going to be giving advice. What kind of advice are they going to be giving? We're not doing the task yet. What kind of advice is the writer going to be giving? Sorry, we're not doing the task yet.
We're already getting some answers.
Okay, lovely. I'm seeing lots of answers. How to memorize, how to become a better learner. Yeah, exactly. So we've got our general image, right, or general idea of the text. So we're going to move straight into looking at the first, or looking at the text a bit more. Again, still not looking at the answers yet. So we're going to focus on number 1 here. So the I was scared to death every time we do something. So starting again from what part of speech? What part of speech is probably here?
A lot of people are typing in verb.
A lot of people are typing in verb, but I'm seeing lots of people who thought about it again and are saying, no, it's a modal verb, maybe. Okay. So we know it's probably a modal verb. Good. That narrows down our options a lot. Now we're going to think about, does our word or phrase need to agree with anything in the sentence? So, for example, I can see the word we, that it will need to agree with. Someone has just commented the past tense, which is absolutely correct, and do. Yeah, so we've actually got 3 things that our answer needs to agree with. And then our last simple thing, is it positive or negative? Because I've got something, I think it's positive. So we know what we need to agree with now. We've got our 3 things. Let's look at the answers. So we'll start with the past tense, because someone said past tense needs to agree with. I see needed, that's past. I see had, that's past. I see had to, that's past. Is must past? No, must can't be the past. So we're going to go ahead and cross that out. Now, we've narrowed down our answers to 3. So I'm going to think about
some of the grammar.
We're going to think about some of the grammar. And someone has absolutely commented something, which is correct. We'll get to that in a second. Are there any impossible answers? And someone has actually said, yes, had by itself is not a modal verb here. We need had to. So we can cross that out. The last thing, so the last thing we're going to look at is, do we need any auxiliary verbs, articles, particles that we don't have? So for example, I'm looking at that need or needed needs a to. So I know that's impossible grammatically, which means that even if I didn't know it before, the only answer I have left is had to. So going back over our strategy, again, we're reading the text quickly, we're looking at the text first, and answering many of the same questions. What part of speech, words or phrase do we connect to? We're adding a bit about agreement here. And this isn't just agreement with the phrase, this is going to be agreement with the whole sentence, and possibly with something else in the text. Which is, again, the point of reading the text first. Do we need something positive or negative? After we've got an idea, we start eliminating. Are there any phrases which are impossible? Something like to going or had by itself when we need a modal verb. Looking at things like, do we have all the articles we need? Do we have all the auxiliary verbs or prepositions or other particles? If we have any answers which are impossible, we get rid of them. And finally, we're going to reread our text to make sure that everything is logical. Again, just like we did with the other task. It's a way of checking ourselves.
All right. I think we've covered a lot, but we might be forgetting about one very important thing. The very first thing we do is we read the text.
Absolutely.
Do you read every word?
No. I read very, very quickly. Because A, I'm going to be reading the text again as I'm doing the task. So this isn't my only chance. I'm looking for the most general idea just so that I know what I'm looking at. Not much more than that.
That's also important because a lot of the texts are from the areas which students might be unfamiliar with, such as biology or science, and they won't be very, very fluent in that in English. So they might have to skip the words they don't know and just get the general idea. All right. So that's our strategies, and we're moving on to the language now. Chris, how many languages can you speak?
Well, so let's say 2.
Okay, what are they?
I can speak English some days, and I try to speak Russian sometimes.
Okay, немножко.
Немножко.
All right. Did you have to learn any other languages at school?
Yes, in school I studied Spanish in high school and Chinese in university.
Oh, okay. You didn't mention those languages when I asked you about what languages you can speak. Why?
Because it's been a very long time since I've had to speak either of them. And as I learned very recently in a trip to Spain, I can speak no Spanish anymore.
Okay. I recently discovered the same. I learned English, German, and French at school, but at the moment, I can only speak English of those foreign languages. I went on to study French at university, and when I was graduating, I think I was around C1. But because I had no practice, I lost my French, unfortunately. Which is what happens to our students as well, because with no revision, they forget all of the things they have learned. So what do we need to do? My tip number 1 would be to get our students to read as much as they can. What we usually do is we read for pleasure, which is very good for our skills development, but there is one more thing we can do to help our students with the language. Books and articles are usually rich in any sort of language. Let's have a look at one example. Can you please read the text I'm going to show you and tell me if you think you can answer the question, if you think you can relate to the text. Anyone ever wanted to learn to juggle or play basketball?
I tried juggling once.
Oh.
It's part of a psychology experiment.
Okay.
I'm not making that up.
All right. I can see some people, yes, painting. Yes, some people are saying they can relate to this text. Speak German, yes, yes. Dancing, definitely. So we can relate to some of the things in this text, and we definitely think the same. Now, if we look at it a little bit more closely, think about the language we would like to take away from this text. Can you please choose one word or phrase and type it into the chat box? Figure out, put off, figure out, put off. I have the same, absolutely the same. Okay, all right, so from this, yes, phrasal verbs. So when teaching this text, when working with my students and working with this text, I would want to teach them these phrasal verbs. I would definitely do the presentation, practice, production, but there is one thing which we need to take into account. That is, whatever we input goes through the short-term and long-term memory and turns into our students' output. And when we're reading for pleasure, the input doesn't stay with us. However, when reading for learning, the input turns into output through several steps. One of the things we need to do at the very beginning is getting our students to notice the things we want them to learn. So when working with the text I've just shown you, here is what I do. I highlight the words I would like my students to pay attention to. As you can see, I've chosen a little more two phrasal verbs than think back to somewhere down the line. Very nice video. And no matter how silly they may seem today. Okay. So we have the input part. We've done the noticing, we've highlighted that. And in order to transform that into short memory, we need to get our students to write those words. So I usually take pieces of paper and I have a lot of stacks of A4 pieces of paper with new vocabulary. I first tried this methodology when I was preparing for my first Cambridge English exam ever. I was 13 and I was preparing for Cambridge English first. Whenever I was reading a text, I would write out several idiomatic expressions or just lexical items which I liked and wanted to learn. That's the kind of piece of paper I had. And after that, I wanted to create sentences. If you remember, we talked about personalization, and these sentences are more or less personalized. As you can see, I've been putting off going to the gym for ages, and I think I should try and do it this weekend, which I'm sure I won't be able to do. And I often think back to my childhood and the times when I didn't have to get up so early, which I'm sure you can relate to as well. So these are personal sentences. They are all about my life, which helps me internalize the language, the new language I want to learn. Once I have those sentences, I can work with them. If we go back to this pattern of input being transformed into output, we need to pay attention to some things. First, that's prominence. Things such as short forms, contractions are not very prominent and are not very visible in text, which means that we need to draw our students' attention to that more closely and, let's say, highlight it in a better and a more efficient way than idioms.
So could we say that prominence is like how easy is it to see this thing in text?
Yep.
So like big long words like stupendous are very prominent because they're easy to see. Yeah.
And probably because you don't really know what they mean.
Yeah.
Right. However, things such as contractions are not very visible and not very important. Secondly, that's frequency. once we've done our little writing out and creating sentences, how often do we go back to that? And that's our revision. We need at least 7 repetitions to be able to recognize the word. And according to question, we need somewhere between 7 and 150 repetitions in order to be able to produce the word fluently. That all depends on the prominence and on the situation and on the connotation, but up to 150 repetitions. Can you believe that? The third thing is the task demands. That is to say how difficult our task is. As you can see, I've created sentences which are personal sentences. I had to think about that, relate that to my life, and come up with something. That's more difficult than the simple gap fill that requires more cognitive challenge and effort, and that is more productive. Okay? So, when reading, we first read the text for pleasure, as we always do. And we, of course, spot some things we want to retain. We highlight the letters we find interesting, that's our noticing stage, and we record that into a notebook or an A4 paper. We write personalized, and that's a key word here, personalized sentence or a story, if we can, with dyslexia. And make sure our teacher checks it for accuracy, because sometimes we don't really know how to manipulate the new letters. Same slips of paper. So what happens next is I take my A4 piece of paper and cut it into slips of paper, delete the target language I would like to learn. As you can see, I've been going to the gym for ages. I think I should try and do it this weekend. So now, when traveling to work on the metro, I can actually take my cards and revise the lectures I'm learning. Your students can do the same. Okay? One very important thing, on the reverse side of the slips of paper, I always have the answers in the correct form because I don't want to forget what I'm learning. Okay? So, going back through the stages, we've had the first 4. Number 5 is cut the paper into separate sentences, delete the target lexis, and make sure we have the answers. Revise the lexis as often as we can. Do you do this?
I do. I also do a variation, writing a question to myself. So for putting off, I'd say, well, what are you putting off right now? So
things like writing your report.
Writing my reports, marking the CA mock exams, yes.
Yeah. And this is even more cognitively challenging and even more effective because when we have to fill in the gaps in the sentences we created, that's fine, but with time we memorize the sentences and it becomes very, very controlled. Although when we have questions, we actually need to think about it because today I'm putting off doing my report. Maybe tomorrow I will be putting off, I don't know, going to the gym again, things like that. Okay, tip number 2 will be related to grammar. Okay, you can see the typical presentation practice production pyramid, which is what we all do in class and we all know, and that's very familiar. However, when working on our book, we wanted to make sure that we enhance the language input and we make sure that our students do learn the language from the text. Which is why in all of our texts, you will see something aimed at noticing. That is to say, we've highlighted the new language, the language we want them to retain. And this is what we encourage everyone to do, because this helps our students see what we want them to learn. Another thing we did was revision 100 times. All of the tasks in one unit are aimed at revising and practicing the same grammatical or lexical items that are usually up to 8 or 9 lexical items and 1 grammatical topic, which we think students need for the ZNO, because this is what, in our experience, students struggle with most. I'll give you one example. This is a text where we have highlighted some of the language. Can you identify what grammar we're aiming at here? Can you type your answers into the chat box, please? ED-ing adjectives. Yes, ED-ing adjectives. All right. As you can see, this text is not very rich in ED-ing adjectives, but still has some examples. And the first thing we need to do, from the framework I showed you earlier, can you identify the aim of this, getting you to see the highlighted words? Why are we asking you to identify the highlighted words and what they're aimed at? Express feelings, yes. We're also asking you to notice, right, adjectives, verbs. We're asking you to notice the grammar and how it's used. All right, so this is the first thing we do in any kind of grammar lesson. We don't start the presentation until the students have seen examples. After this, you'll see this task. Can you tell us the aim of this task, or possibly the stage in the framework?
Again, thinking about this like teachers, not like students.
You see the difference? That's right. The difference. Understanding? Yes, that's correct. And in our PPP framework, this is the presentation. All right. Okay. After that, we would move on to this task. It's just a short abstract. There will be 7 sentences. So what's the aim of this task? What are we getting our students to do here? Practice, practice, practice. Yes, people are shouting at us. That's practice. Excellent. Finally, this is a combination of 2. Can you identify the aim here? Production, yes. But before they actually produce something, is it grammatically correct to say, have you ever been really embarrassing? Well, probably it is.
Yeah, it is actually, but okay. That's not a normal question.
No, no. Okay, so people are shouting at us. That's practice and production. And that's right. Okay? So that's what we do. And in our framework, we don't stop there. We revise. Okay, so if you look closely, these are the questions from the exercise with some tasks. Okay, we're going to demonstrate how to work with this task. Chris, can you turn away from the screen, please? Thank you. I'm going to read a sentence to you. Can you fill in the gap with the grammatically correct form of the word?
I hope I can.
Well, let's see. Okay. The word is excite. Okay. The sentence, what situations would be really for you?
Exciting.
That's right. Okay, so Chris, what situations would be really exciting for you?
Winning $1 million would be very exciting for me, I think.
Well, I would definitely agree with you, right? Okay. Anything else?
Going to Fiji, where it's not so cold, would be really exciting.
Completely agree with you. And that's the kind of activity we usually do with our students. Take the same questions, first do a little bit of controlled practice, and then personalized reduction. All right? Okay. Are we about to finish with our input here?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So we've done our bit of input. We hope that this will result in the same kind of output from you. We're now moving on to questions and answers.
Yeah.
if you have any questions you'd like to ask us, we're now going to have around 10 minutes to answer them. So feel free to type your questions. Enter the chat box, please. Seems like, okay, which good books can you recommend for ZNO?
Can I take a copy?
Yay.
We literally wrote the book on it. So you can see it here. Hold on. Exam Booster ZNO. It's sold in, they're showing it in Bookling now. Linguist, Bookling, yeah. So, yeah, we literally wrote the book on it.
A few words on this book. It's aimed at helping our students both learn and extend their knowledge of lexis and grammar and prepare for the tasks. It's aimed at about 80 hours of studying in group, 50 to 80 hours of studying, depending on how big your group is and how much revision you're doing. Okay, so it's both.
I saw a question about reading strategies, changing the topic. So reading strategies, this book does, our book actually does deal with reading strategies. And Cambridge University Press is going to be going on tour soon in, I keep forgetting, Nikolaev, Cherkasy, and Odessa. And I will actually be there giving a separate seminar on developing reading skills, focused on exams. So,
join us.
Yeah.
Join Chris. We've also seen some questions. Do the books for preparing for FC work well? Depends on what you mean by work well. Some of the tasks are very, very similar. And when working on our book, we were relying on our experience of preparing students for FC. The strategies don't really change much.
Yeah. For example, FCE, open gap fill, FC, multiple choice gap fill.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so yes, the books work well, but you have to be critical about which sections you're choosing. And please let's remember that we need to stretch our students' language and do language inputs. Okay? All right.
We have a question about PPP lesson. Is better for skills lesson or systems?
Ooh. Good question. Would you like to answer it?
I can take that. Yeah, PPP is mainly a systems framework. But that doesn't mean we can't have a PPP section in a skills lesson. But what that usually means is that after we've done our reading text or our listening text, that we'll use a short PPP type presentation to present language. So for example, using I can actually go back. Here we go. So for example, this reading text is part of a use of English task. So the students would first do the use of English task. We would check it, review the strategy, all of this, look at why the right answers are right, look at why the wrong answers are wrong, and then we would start our PPP lesson using these ing, ed adjectives. So the takeaway, PPP is a systems framework, but we can use it as part of a skills lesson.
Okay, thank you, Chris. All right, we've also had a question about the tasks for ZNO and if they're going to change. As of now, the information we have is that reading, use of English, and writing are not going to change, but we're going to have a listening section, which Chris and I are working on at the moment for the exam booster. So there was also a question about strategies for multiple choice listening. At the moment, we're working on the listening section for the book, which will be available end of January or February. And we'll talk about the strategies for listening tasks there. So we think there will be a listening section in the exam there will be this section in the book. There was a question about the books we can use to learn English before exam booster. Well, we are huge fans of a lot of course books. We have worked with various books. We would definitely recommend General English course books published by Cambridge University Press. You can contact the office and the methodologists at Linguist will be happy to recommend the books which would be appropriate for your age group and levels. One thing to remember is that ZNO is aimed at B1 and B2. So we definitely need to get our students to this level of general English. All right. There was a question about websites which we could use to practice grammar. Websites. That's a good one.
Well, if they're talking about just practicing grammar, I know websites for practicing writing. There is Cambridge Write and Improve.
That's one thing, and that's what we use at our school, and that's great. Websites for practicing grammar.
Well, we have the apps, Grammar English mobile application.
Oh, okay. We can probably answer some of those questions later on the Cambridge University Press ELT Ukraine Facebook page to give you more information. We don't use that website that much.
Mainly because you have to be really kind of skeptical.
Yeah.
Because most websites haven't gone through the same kind of quality control that goes into into a course book. So you'll see examples that are wrong, that sometimes are just blatantly wrong.
All right. We'll answer that question later on the Facebook page. Okay. Do we have any questions which we haven't answered?
Something about writing class. Can a student write more than 100 words?
For ZNO?
Yeah, ZNO.
There is no word limit. Yeah, there's no official word limit for ZNO writing tasks. They have to be at least 100 words. Yeah, at least 100. But if they want to write 200, some of the examples which I've seen have been 300 words.
Yes.
But this comes with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Let's keep in mind that in 100 words, in a 100-word text, we could have some mistakes and errors. In a 300-word text, that would be multiplied by 3, possibly. Yes. Right? So, in this case, it's better to be sensible about the length of writing and possibly not exceed the 150 limit. Yeah. Although, again, there is no official word limit. Less is more, yes.
Yeah, less is more, definitely, because an important thing about how the ZNO is marked is that they use negative marking. So you start from a full score, and they subtract points depending on what you've done wrong, basically. So that means that any opportunity you give yourself to make mistakes hurts your score.
Yeah. Right. Do we have any other questions we haven't answered?
Will this presentation be available? That's more of an organizational question. We would say that the presentation will be available as a video recording of the webinar.
Yes.
I hope the participants can hear me. Yeah.
All right. I'll say that again to make sure everyone can hear it. The question was, will this presentation be available? Yes, it will be available as a recording, and you will be able to find it
on the YouTube channel.
On a YouTube channel, linguist.com. All right. Any other questions? Cool. Some of my colleagues need it. Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. All right. So many things. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for giving us your time and your attention, really.
Thank you. If you still have any questions, please send them to the Facebook page. We'll be happy to answer them within the next few days, do come along to our Cambridge tour in Mykolaiv, Cherkasy, and Data, and we hope to see you soon again.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. These are our emails, by the way. If you still have any questions, you can contact us. But please do contact the Cambridge University Press Ukraine page on Facebook.
Thank you, Kata. Thank you, Chris, so much. That was very exciting and engaging. Thank you all for attending. You will receive an email shortly saying that after the webinar, please go to the link that you will have in the email and fill out the questionnaire. After filling out the questionnaire, you will receive the certificate within a week. So there will be certificates of attendance, the electronic ones, of course, but make sure that you check your email, check your spam folder maybe, and find the letter from WebEx saying thank you for attending the webinar. Please go there and fill out your contact form. In case you're interested in buying Exam Booster, please contact your representatives at the Linguist company, booklink.ua, linguist.ua, Facebook for the Linguist, Facebook for Cambridge University Press Ukraine. Any kind of means of contact is possible. We will be happy to see you in the future. Thank you for the good reviews. Thank you for being active. See you soon. Have a great day.